Welcome to the Mount Pleasant Podcast, featuring discussions and interviews about the people, places, and events that make Mount Pleasant such a special place.
This is the Mount Pleasant Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Cleary, and all thanks to the great people of Mount Pleasant Magazine, I get the honor, the privilege of introducing you to Mount Pleasant, the people who make it such a special place to do business, to work, and even to live. We're introducing you to Mount Pleasant's best on the Mount Pleasant Podcast. All the time we talk about communication. It's important in your relationship. It's important at work. What about the communication that you have with government? That's what we're going to explore today here on the Mount Pleasant Podcast as we look at the town of Mount Pleasant, a great place to live, a great place to work, and a great place to deal with your government. There's a new series that the town has put on called Town Talks, and I want to educate you about that. So we figured we'd go to the ladies in the know today on the Mount Pleasant Podcast to find out about the town of Mount Pleasant Town Talks. Liz Boyles is with us and joined as well by Kara Browder. Liz, let's start with you. The idea for Town Talks, where did that emanate from?
Well, you've already spoiled it for me. It's communication. Nope. Everything we do, we relate to and interact with citizens and members of the public. And over time, we keep hearing the same questions over and over on different topics, just kind of realize that it might be kind of a communication gap out there. So what we have decided to do is to try to do a couple of things with our Town Talk series. One is educate the public on some of these questions we keep hearing about. But we also want to make sure that we have those lines of communication open. So a lot of times, we'll have an opportunity or need to get in touch with, say, a particular neighborhood about something. Something's going on and we want to make sure they know about it, but we may not have a good contact. So we figured a way to, try to build some of those communication bridges, if you will, was to set up an opportunity to have some conversations. So I think
a lot of people don't believe a lot of times that they can communicate with their government. So obviously opening the door, opening the window to this is a good thing. So we've got these town talks that are set up. We've already had one, and there are more in the future. And before we get to the ones that are coming up in the future, can one of you ladies weigh in just so people get an idea? The first town talk session, what was that about and how do you think it went?
Well, I think it went really well. It was a very intimate group. Only a few members of the public were there, but that gave us an opportunity to have some really good conversations. So the first Town Talk meeting, if you will, event was with members of the Charleston County government. They had actually reached out to us trying to figure out a way to share information about what they're doing with Mount Pleasant residents. And we just kind of grabbed onto that as, hey, there's a great opportunity for our first Town Talk. So we had folks from the auditor's office, the assessor, the treasurer's office, and the probate court for Charleston County came over, kind of gave all of us a rundown of the different ways that they engage with the public, the things they're responsible for, programs they run, opportunities for saving money, which is always, kind of a popular thing. And so that's what we did in that first meeting. And it was a good meeting. I hope we have a better turnout for the next one.
Well, let's look at what we've got coming up. There'll be 3 more town talks, at least that are scheduled now. What's going to be the subject of our next town talk?
Okay. Well, Brian, we have on May 30th, which is our next one, is going to be Know Your Zone. It's hurricane and emergency preparedness. As we know, the start of hurricane season is June 1st. So we thought this would be a great one to kind of start off with here, and it'll be great for those who are new to the town of Mount Pleasant, as well as a refresher for those who have lived here for a while. So that, again, is on May 30th, and that's going to be, the presentation is going to be by Shannon Whitehead, who is our Emergency Management and Resilience Officer. So that'll be May 30th. August 15th will be the next one, and that's going to be everything you ever wanted to know about town finances. And that's going to be presented by Marcy Kotoff, our Chief Financial Officer. And then we have 2 more scheduled later in the fall, but those are to be determined. We have one to talk about we're in the planning department, some initiatives we have going on So we'll see if that's going to, if that we're going to move forward with that. And then we have one scheduled for next February. So, and that is yet to be determined.
Yes, sir.
You're listening to the Mount Pleasant Podcast.
Well, I have to think the subject alone, the hurricane preparedness. I've lived here more than 15 years, yet every year I'm still a little nervous. Am I ready? So I guess what the hope is, you talked about newcomers, and there's certainly a lot of them in Mount Pleasant in the Low Country, but this would be a session that would be of interest to me as well.
Sure. Absolutely. Because, things change a little bit each year. I mean, obviously the roads are where the roads are and the storms are where the storms come from. But, sometimes there are different things you need to know about, maybe lane reversals or what is your preferred evacuation route. Those sorts of things can change. So that's what we want.
And are the conversations that go on, is this a two-way conversation where I'm going to be learning, but I can also ask or input?
Absolutely.
Sure, absolutely.
So we are talking today as part of the Town of Mount Pleasant Town Talk series. If you haven't heard about the series, in a way that could be a good thing because that's what we're introducing you to here on the Mount Pleasant podcast, where the pages of Mount Pleasant magazine come alive. I'm Brian Cleary, joined by two women from the town of Mount Pleasant. And let me go over this a little bit, if we wouldn't mind. Liz Boyles is the division chief of the Office of Neighborhood Livability. Liz, I have to be honest. I've lived in Mount Pleasant for almost 2 decades now. I didn't realize there was an Office of Neighborhood Livability. What does your office do?
It's a relatively new thing in the scheme of things. As Kara said a moment ago, we're within the planning department. So 3 years ago, there was a bit of a reorganization of just, where things are located in the town, a little bit of a refocus on livability issues within the town. So that can be anything from code enforcement to concerns about short-term rentals, to trees, to historical and cultural issues, green issues. You kind of name it a little bit. It's a little bit all over the place. But the whole point was, the town has grown so much that there are perhaps, now we're getting to that point where there are areas of town that might not necessarily be as fresh as they once were. Maybe there are things we need to be addressing, focusing on to make sure that it's the Mount Pleasant we all want it to be,
So Liz is joined by Kara Browder. Now, Kara, I noticed that you're a principal planner for the town, but you have on your email, your message, 4 capital letters. And that's always impressive when somebody has capital letters after their name. So AICP are your 4 letters. What do they stand for?
That's the American Institute of Certified Planners. It was something that I passed years ago when I was first out of school. The test has gotten a lot harder, and we do have somebody here in our office who just passed that same exam.
It's a professional certification.
It's a professional certification.
But it's very impressive, and you got to roll with it. I mean, come on.
Yes,
I don't have any letters after my
Yes.
name. And Liz, I don't see any letters after yours, not to be demeaning at all.
There's a good long story there that we'll share some other time.
Oh, okay. There we go. That's it. Keep them coming back. Keep them coming back. So let's talk about you ladies individually in turn. Liz, you've been in the town of Mount Pleasant for how long now?
Well, I'm coming up on 17 years. It's not all consecutive, but I was here for 10 years back in the 90s, early 2000s. And then I had 2 little boys that kept me really busy and away from here for about a decade, 13 years, something like that. And then I've been back for 7. So
see, the Low Country always drags you back in, and that's a good thing.
Well, I grew up here, so there's no getting me gone.
And Kara, what about you? Are you a resident here? You from other places? Give us a little bit about your background.
I have been here with the town of Mount Pleasant about 3 years. I have worked in and around the Tri-County area since I graduated from Clemson some time ago. Not originally from here. I'm originally from up north. I don't really consider myself, a transplant per se. I've been here so long.
Well,
But
maybe you and I can talk about that a little bit because I, like you, are from up north. I've lived in Mount Pleasant for 16 years, but I know I'm still not a local. Will you or I ever get over that hurdle?
I don't know. I married a local, so I don't know if that helps, if that, kind of moves you up the line. But I did marry a local, so.
Well, I guess, Kara, that I don't have to ask you the Clemson, South Carolina question that I tend to ask people. I think I know where your loyalties are. Liz, Clemson, South Carolina, you have a dog in that fight?
Both of my boys went to Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of orange on this podcast.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing.
2 Clemson grads.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the town talks. What is it that, from a town standpoint, that you hope that the residents are able to take out? And what is it that the town hopes to take away from having these sessions?
Back to kind of the beginning, communication. We want to have a better ongoing communication stream with our citizens, and so we hope, obviously, these are educational talks. We'd love for people to go away with information that they can use, that they can share with their neighborhoods. Because I know not all the millions are going to make it here on a particular Thursday night, and not that we have millions, but, not everybody has room in their schedule for that. So we love people to take these things back to the neighborhoods. If you've got an HOA, share it with your HOA information, that sort of thing. That making that connection for us is huge, to be able to know that, hey, there are these folks, from whatever neighborhood that come to these meetings. Let's reach out to them if we've got a need to get in touch with that neighborhood for whatever reason.
And Liz, when you talk about what the overall goal is and the way the Office of Neighborhood Livability is set up, you ran through some items that people may have some feedback on.
Right.
What is it? If I'm in a neighborhood and I've got an issue, is that something I can reach out directly to you, or
Absolutely.
What's the process in terms of how should I address that?
Sure. There's an email address set up. It's livability@tompsc.com is kind of the general way to get to our livability team, if you will. And depending on, what sort of question it is, it'll get to the right person that way.
Kara, in terms of planning, I have to think that your department has got to be one of the busiest. I mean, both of you, but when
Definitely,
we talk about the town of Mount Pleasant, we've talked about the fact I've mentioned, I've been here 16 years. And, you get to the time where people say, yeah, there used to be nothing north of the ILP connector. And obviously there is now. What's the biggest challenge that you have in terms of planning for the town as we continue to grow and move forward?
The biggest challenge.
That's a tough one.
We do have a couple initiatives going on right now that we hope maybe in the future will be one of our town talks sessions. We're going through a zoning code rewrite right now, which is rewriting our zoning code. And we are also looking at our comprehensive plan, which is a 10-year plan. We are now at 5 years, so we're looking to provide that update and review of that plan. And that helps us to kind of see where we're at, what future challenges we have, what we've addressed, what needs to be addressed. Of course, one of the things you're going to hear is traffic. We here at the town have a transportation department. So it's those guys' challenge to kind of really work through those issues. Right now, I would say one of the largest is, I'd like to say, providing attainable housing is one of those issues that we get
have a lot of conversations about that.
Yeah.
Maybe you could address this one for me real quick, because I think what has drawn a lot of people to Mount Pleasant, that it's a lovely town, but it has that small town feel. Mm-hmm. But we continue to grow. Is there a way that you're going to be able to keep Mount Pleasant with the small town feel, but still accept all the growth that we have?
I'm going to let Liz kind of fix this. Will probably be better. But I think through this effort, we are trying to, just that better communication and trying to get people just to become engaged. We're here, at Town Hall. We'd like to see you guys, the residents come out, be part,
right.
Make decision. We worked at Blessing of the Fleet here last week, and now there were a ton of people that attended that event and some of the other events we have. And we're hoping that this Town Talk series will kind of spur that same interest. People will come out, want to kind of take in, what we're offering, like the Town Talk series that we're going to have with, the financial aspect. Well, that's important to folks to kind of hear how, we budget, how things come in, how things go out. So, and then I'll let Liz kind of tackle the rest.
And I think to Kara's point, there's value in people having, putting a face and a name to things, knowing where town hall is, what goes on in town hall, who do you need to talk to if you have a question? And I think that goes back to the small town feel. If you know that, Liz or Kara or Chris or somebody else is the person you need to talk to about whatever your concern is, that helps it feel a lot less intimidating. Helps you feel as though you actually have a way to get an answer instead of just some faceless, bureaucracy. So to that point, we try to do things like Blessing of the Fleet, talks like this. When we have this past year, what year is this? 22, 23, we did our Public Input Matters series, which was we took a roadshow around town for 7-8 months, talking about different issues in the town and trying to hear what people had to say about this. I think, even in this digital age, and I love, podcasts and Zoom calls and the opportunity that these present, but there's nothing that beats a face-to-face conversation with somebody over something that matters to them. And that's what we're trying to do with this Town Talks.
Liz Boyles and Kara Browder joining me today. Brian Cleary here on the Mount Pleasant Podcast. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us as we bring the pages of Mount Pleasant Magazine alive and we talk about communication here within the town of Mount Pleasant between residents and government as well. Liz, when you do talk to people, is it mostly complaints that you get? And wouldn't it be nice to get a little input? Because I've got thoughts. You seem to be welcome if somebody's got an idea to share with you.
Absolutely. There are a lot of great ideas out there, and we'd love to hear them.
And so the Town Talk series is about that. If I have an idea for maybe a subject for Town Talks, is this something that you guys are going to set up, or are you accepting input on that?
I don't mean to interrupt. We want to hear. We want to hear from y'all, and that was two things that I meant to say about that, but had forgotten. One is, as Kara mentioned, we have certain meetings set up at this point. We've got a couple of scheduled town talks with topics. But after that, we're a little bit, we think we're going to do in November. We're planning to do a planning one. But depending on what comes up between now and then, because believe it or not, November is still a little ways off. We're not quite there yet. We would love to hear what people want to hear about. And at the meetings themselves, and once we kind of get this ball rolling a little bit better, we'll have, opportunities, give us ideas. What would you like to hear about next go round? And also these events going forward, that we were not able to record the first one, but going forward, they will be recorded and put on the town website, so that if you happen to miss it or you missed some point that was made, you'll be able to go back to it and listen to it again. So we're going to try to build a library like that in case you miss it. You won't be totally missing out.
So let's focus on getting as many people as we can to the next Town Talks event. So the event will take place. Give us the date again and where it'll be.
It's going to be on May 30th, right here at Town Hall in Town Council Chambers. We start at 6 p.m. and typically about an hour and a half. So 6 to 7:30, right here at 100 Ann Edwards Lane. For those who don't know, right off Houston Northcutt.
And is this an event that I'll need to pre-register for or get an invite for, or I can just show up?
Just show up.
Just show up.
And so the topic of our next one, particularly with the date, June 1st starts hurricane season. So this is going to be really a timely, interesting session as well.
That's correct.
And so we're going to learn all about hurricane preparedness. And if I'm coming to the meeting again, we just want to stress the fact that I'm going to learn, but you ladies, the sessions are a two-way communication.
Yes, sir. Yep. I mean, we want to make sure that folks learn, what is being presented, obviously, but there will certainly, we've kind of talked about it internally being like an hour of presentation and a half hour of questions. It'll be
interactive where folks have questions, certainly we want to, avail them that, opportunity to ask those questions and the dialogue kind of back and forth.
And the key to this will be, because this is the way I always am, if I remember to bring my umbrella, it doesn't rain. If I'm prepared for hurricanes, we're not going to get any, right?
I like it. I like the way you think.
If we're all ready, then they won't happen.
So as you guys get into the summer, what more are you looking for in terms of, is there ways as a resident that I can give back maybe and help the town of Mount Pleasant? Is there anything specifically that you think, hey, for folks who are listening to this, obviously come to the town talks is one. Is there anything else you're looking to for the residents to help you do your jobs better?
Oh, goodness. I wasn't expecting that one. Yeah. But I will say this, just on the theme of emergency preparedness, there are classes that the county teaches to residents to be better prepared to help, and I'm forgetting the term, be good volunteers to help out during an emergency situation. And that would be something that might come up at the coming meeting, that those opportunities exist.
Come out, be a part of the meeting. Town Talks. It's a series, a classroom series that's really about the town, about the residents, about everyone coming together. These ladies would love to see you next time. Liz Boyles and Kara Browder, thanks so much for being our guests today. We appreciate everything you do to make this town an even better place to live.
Thank you so much. Well, thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Brian. We appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about Town Talks.
And we look forward to seeing you as well at the very next Town of Mount Pleasant Town Talks event going on at Town Hall. And thanks for joining us today here where the pages of Mount Pleasant Magazine come alive on the Mount Pleasant Podcast.
Thanks for spending your time with the Mount Pleasant Podcast, your community, your podcast. Listen to past and future episodes at mountpleasantpodcast.com.